From a radio studio on Long Island, New York, come two die-hard fans of the greatest rock and roll band hailing from Hollywood, California. Dissecting all things Guns N' Roses and anything else in their distorted minds, it's Brando and Scotto.
'Cause you know what the fuck you are!
And this is Appetite for Distortion.
Try it again!
And welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion. My name is Mirando, and with me as always is my partner in perfect rhyme, Scotto, Ian. What's going on, bud?
Well, nothing is going on. This hasn't been a tumultuous, crazy week that could change the outcome of the entire world as we know it. Nothing out of the ordinary has happened.
Wait, why? What happened? What happened? Did I miss something?
Is that what Gary Johnson would be asking? He's like, did I miss the election?
What is Aleppo? So, yeah, I mean, obviously this is a Guns N' Roses podcast. We're going to get into that very shortly. But since we are human beings, we would be remiss if we did not mention that we have a new president here in the United States, because we have listeners who from other countries, and we feel we should acknowledge such a historic event of having our very first Oompa Loompa president. I mean, we're not going to get too much into it. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
And I think this gives us another reason to do what we do, and that's to give an outlet for something other than politics. Because it's been all over Facebook.
It's
all
everywhere
over Twitter.
you go.
I think even Duff McKagan just tweeted after the results was wow.
Yeah.
So I will liken those sentiments just of wow. That's it. That's all I got to say is wow, and I hope we all don't die. That's it.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. If you listen to the latest Soft Rep podcast that went up, I get a little bit more in depth.
By the way, I think it's important because I know Soft Rep, but for the people who are still new to it, for me, I always pronounced it because the way it's spelled, Sofrep.
I've heard people say it that way too,
So
though.
I just want people to know how to find it.
SOF, Special Operations, I think. SOFREP. But yeah, that's, the Special Operations podcast that I work on. And I get a little bit more in depth with Jack Murphy about this type of stuff. And you can listen to it all there. But yeah, this is a break from all that. But how could you really not mention it? It was a shock to the entire world. For one, you could hear me on that podcast in weeks before say there's no way Donald Trump was going to be the president. And it seems very strange to say President-elect Donald Trump.
I don't want to say it. I just want everyone to be good to each other. That's how I am. I'm going to live my life continuing to live it the way that I do by treating people the way that they treat me, or I want to treat them the way I want to be treated.
Sure.
And that's it. And no president's going to dictate that.
No.
We did tweet out Axl Rose for president. For some reason, somebody made up Axl Rose for president pins. So I got to get me one of those. But we can transition right into Guns. Unless you have something else to mention.
Oh, no. I mean, well, it's kind of funny. And he's been on the podcast, so it is relevant, even though he's more of a soft rep guy. There are honestly about a dozen people who wrote in Mike Ritland for president. They tweeted it to me. I got emails of, this is my write-in on the ballot, Mike Ritland for president.
He came a little bit short, as I think the official write-in victor was Harambe.
Yes.
15,000 people wrote in a gorilla.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Actually, I will tell you something.
That's why we're America.
I will tell you something funny that, will add a little levity to this situation that is about the write-in stuff. There was one tweet of some person. You know what? I'm going to assume a gay man, kind of looked like it. If I had to guess,
okay.
A little effeminate, but did a write-in for president that said Paris Hilton. It was like, I voted, haha. And then the tweet later that night was, I'm scared to live in this country. How could you do this? Thank you, America. And it's like, you wrote in Paris Hilton. It's like, how does this happen?
I know.
Well, people like you who write in Paris Hilton. If you really felt Donald Trump was such a threat, then, I didn't vote for either, but I also, I have no preference among the two. I don't think either was a good option. I know your feelings on this. I think it was the worst, at least of my lifetime, the worst presidential election ever. I mean, I thought we had two extremely terrible candidates for different reasons, but there's definitely something considerably strange about Donald Trump being the president. It's weird. It's very weird to me. Hillary Clinton, it wouldn't have been so out of the ordinary. So it is a shock to not just America, but the world.
I pretty much agree with you, and this is not a political podcast, so I'm not going to. I can just mirror your sentiments. So I'm on the same page as you.
You do know that at the first Guns N' Roses show, though, the first reunion show, that Axl made a Donald Trump comment.
Did he?
He said something to the effect of when it comes to this set list or when it comes to this band, I'm like Donald Trump. I consult with myself. He said something like that. Art Tavana probably knows the exact quote, but yeah, that's what he said at the first show.
That's pretty brilliant.
Yeah.
That's pretty brilliant. And, you take a song like Civil War and the fact that, obviously a lot of anti-war songs from the 60s are still relevant, but what's so civil about war anyway?
Yeah.
So that's why a band like Guns N' Roses and escapism, like GNR's music and rock and roll as a whole, that's going to help me continue, and hopefully wherever you are, you're listening to Appetite for Distortion.
And that's another reason I love Guns N' Roses. I'm glad you brought that up, is Appetite for Distortion, to me, I still consider a hair metal album, and that's something we've...
Destruction, you mean?
Did I say Appetite for Distortion?
Yeah, that's fine.
This has become so a part of my lexicon. Yeah. Appetite for Distortion.
Of our
it's
podcast,
funny.
it works.
Hey, I love this podcast. But so yeah, Appetite for Destruction to me, and I know we've debated this a little, is still a hair metal album to me. And the subject matter is very Sunset Strip, drinking and driving, partying, sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that. And then when they did Use Your Illusions, the two Use Your Illusion albums, way more of a deeper albums. You listen to Estranged, you listen to November Rain, and there's way more of a deep message to those two albums.
Absolutely. And I think that's what separates Guns N' Roses from a lot of bands. And I've been listening to a lot of Pandora now. Not satellite radio, not even terrestrial radio, and a lot of the older classic rock seem to have just more meaning to their music, and especially when you have people like Bob Dylan getting a Nobel Peace Prize, whether you would agree with that or not. The lyrics meant something, and he wrote during a time of war. So it's going to be interesting where Guns N' Roses have kind of had their finger on the pulse of how we've been feeling. That's why we gravitated towards them.
Even Chinese Democracy had, a lot of those songs were really deep, especially Chinese Democracy itself. When I heard Axl talk about how he came up with the title for that and the meaning behind that after he watched, a film about Mao Zedong.
He's pretty political, but he's smart about it. Whenever he tweets or makes a comment, he knows what's going on about dictatorship, but he doesn't shove it in our face like a Bruce Springsteen would. So I like it in his latest tweet, which is heartfelt, but it's typical Axl. Dogs' lives matter. Fire arrest convict, incarcerate NYPD police officer Ruben Cuesta. I'm not sure the story behind that, but
Axl seems to be a big animal rights guy as well, because that's come out several times when there are countries doing horrible things to animals. He'll be a part of some petition and he'll get the word out there. And
it's also interesting too. I believe we spoke about this. Might have been last show. The lyrics to 1 in a Million.
Yeah,
and I feel like if you take Axl's mindset in 1 in a Million, that can really create the viewpoint of a lot of people, at least in America right now, that they don't recognize the country.
Yeah.
Who are these? I'm not going to use. I don't want to use the words Axl used in the the N word and the.
Well, it's a different time period, as we've said, and
I feel like that's typical America. I got off, and people speaking different languages, and this and that. So that might have been the catalyst to President Trump. But whatever.
Yeah. But that is, just to sum it up, that is what I love about Guns N' Roses' catalog. If I want to listen to a sex, drugs, rock and roll song, I can put on Appetite for Destruction. And, if I'm having a hard time in life, if just things are not going right, I could put on Estranged. And it's just they have songs for every emotion. And that, to me, that's what makes a great, well-rounded band. And that's why these songs are timeless to me. And that's why we do this podcast.
Yeah. No, and then the same thing with... as we've gone deeper into just rock and roll in general and going underneath the Guns N' Roses blanket, if you will, that's what rock has always been about. It's been about rebellion. I've seen some jokes about there going to be some pretty good punk songs written in the next few years about what's going on.
Yeah. Are there any big punk bands still around, though?
I mean, I don't know if you consider Green Day.
I was going to say Green Day.
But they put out a new record. But I'm sure they may put out another one, American Idiot Part 2. You never know.
I could see it happening, yeah.
But you never know. But I mean, that's always been kind of the essence of rock and roll, and has kind of been. I don't know where it's gone. You don't see too much of that in hip hop. I mean, if you do, it's not in the mainstream. I know.
What, politics or
politics? You're
Yeah,
probably the guy to answer.
No,
that.
there is though. I definitely think there is with some. Like Talib Kweli and all that stuff, and Jay-Z has written political stuff. And
I will say this though. I don't know if you watched. No, you didn't. You watched UFC last night.
Kanye too. I'm sorry. Kanye is super political.
You know what? What's really funny? If it's him versus Trump in 2020, I don't know. I might have to vote yay.
Yeah.
But even as we were taping this, last night was Saturday Night Live with Dave Chappelle, which was one of the best episodes I've ever seen from start to finish.
I still have to see it because I was watching UFC.
Brilliant. But they had a Tribe Called Quest on, obviously. Their songs they did?
Yeah.
Political, amazing. Some of the best. I mean, obviously without Fife, the best performance I've seen. So that's a little political preamble to the Guns N' Roses podcast.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I'd say the big news in the Guns N' Roses world was Steven Adler coming out in Argentina and drumming. And everybody is happy when they see that. And I remember it was pretty explosive on Twitter among just our fan base of. Steven Adler's in Argentina right now. That means he's probably going to drum at these shows. And there was a lot leading up to it, and he did, and it excites people, man. I want to see him be a part of this band as much as possible.
It shows, and we spoke about this last episode, where he put something on Instagram of him drumming along to "You Could Be Mine."
Yes.
Was it? It just shows you that he's continuing forward. And that's nice. It wasn't just a one-off, hey, here's to appease the fans. He's somehow involved in the future, whether that's just doing what he's been doing or more. So that's positive. Now we have the whole Izzy situation, if there is a situation, how that's kind of going to unravel itself. And, Art Tavana, he seems to be the guy. Oh, and I didn't read the article yet, but...
That's a great article.
Oh, no, I read Art's article.
Oh, okay.
I said that sentence before the following sentence, which should have came first. Mick Wall, who Art called out for stealing his story about Steven Adler's back and some other stories. Mick Wall, I saw, came out with a lengthy Izzy article maybe a week or two after Art Tavana. I find that very, very curious. So I had to read Mick Wall's article and compare the two.
We got to get him back on, Art, and maybe get Mick Wall. But yeah, I kind of like the drama. I like our podcast being involved in drama. Anything that can help us blow up and get press, I'm all for.
No, absolutely. So that's positive. I'm glad about. I'm happy about that. And did you do My Michelle, or did he do the same couple songs?
I know I saw he did Out to Get Me.
Okay, because he's been doing that one.
Yeah.
It's okay. So it's we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
The fact that this is a train still rolling, but there are a couple other things before we get into I guess the big Guns N' Roses topic we can get into, which involves Metallica, or Kirk Hammett. A couple of points. We tweeted out, I should say you took notice of it, that Duff McKagan's It's So Easy documentary was on Netflix.
Yeah.
I've read Slash's book. I've read Steven Adler's. I did not read Duff's. I mean, I wanted to, just haven't had the time. So and I know, did you eventually go to see the documentary when it premiered in the city?
Yeah, I saw it. I saw the premiere in New York City. It was great.
Right. Okay. So this is my first time seeing it. And we talked about it off air just for a bit. I was just so disappointed.
There goes Duff McKagan coming on the podcast. You blew it. You ruined it.
I want to preface this with I like you, Duff, and I want you on this podcast. And who am I to criticize anybody? But the way I viewed it, I like the premise of it, where it's, I like how he got dressed up a little bit of it, a little punk rockish, a little loose-fitting suit, and he had a band behind him, and it wasn't so much a concert, but it was just a reading. And just, I know what Duff sounds like, but to hear him speak at that length, it just reminded me of that, to mention Saturday Night Live again, the Californian skit. He has that West Coast accent, which for me, I'm a New Yorker. Maybe not everyone wants to hear me, read. He just doesn't have that voice that I want to hear, that strikes emotion out of me from his words. It's just, it took a lot away from me. just hearing him read. I maybe I'm an asshole for saying that, but he just doesn't.
We're honest on here.
I know, but I mean, I listen to Axl. I think he has a very well-spoken voice.
I love Slash's voice.
Yeah, even Slash's a bit, but I think Duff's too surfer, too stoner. I know he's sober.
That's him, though. He brings that personality to the band. I mean,
which I like, but in this context, and when you're reading a story, it just took me out of it.
I'll back you up on the voice thing. Not necessarily in this. I didn't even think about it for this. I enjoyed it. But do you have Duff's solo album, Believe in Me, before there was Loaded and all that?
I do not.
I couldn't get into it, man. Like his voice singing, he's good on some of the covers on Spaghetti Incident, but like that album as a whole, I just couldn't get into it. But to be completely honest, I read the book before. Now I'm forgetting the name of Duff's.
It's So Easy and Other Lies.
So I read the book, It's So Easy and Other Lies. And I saw, when I saw the documentary, I already knew what it was going to be about. If you want to call it documentary reading, I don't know what you want to call it. It was very different than your usual documentary. But I loved it, man. I thought it was great. It definitely could have gone more in depth at certain points. I agree, but I liked it. I really enjoyed seeing it. I liked hearing his side of the story. I thought it was inspiring hearing about him getting back in the dojo and training and all that after his alcoholism and doing I think it was a triathlon, or I think it might have just been a bike race, but just doing all these great events and redefining himself after Guns N' Roses, finding himself again, doing his own solo projects. I thought it was excellent. So I don't echo your sentiment on that, but
it touched the surface with all those, and that's for what it is for me. It just touched the surface. I want to know more, especially about his childhood, and especially after speaking with John Miller about Axl's childhood. Why did he gravitate towards drugs? Why did he gravitate towards drinking? Why did he do these things? Why did he make these decisions? That's what I want to know. So he seemed to scratch the surface a bit for all these things. I want to know more. I want to know more about Michael McKagan.
Well, the one thing about Duff that stands out to me is he's actually the best writer of the group. I mean,
which is why I was surprised.
And he became a sports writer, which is up your alley.
He writes for like Seattle Weekly. I think he had like a...
But I think he did ESPN or something like that.
Yeah, I think he's done that. I think he's written an article
fact check this after.
Playboy as well. No, that's why I was surprised.
And so the thing is, if I had to guess, for example, when you read Slash's book, the actual writing, I think that's more Anthony Bozza.
Sure.
Duff's book, I think a lot of it is coming directly from him because he's a writer himself. And I remember he wrote a great article about Jeremy Lin during Linsanity, and he compared it to him. And when Guns N' Roses blew up, and it was like Guns N' Roses Insanity, and it was like, am I all of a sudden better looking, and all these girls giving me attention as this album blew up that didn't give a shit about me?
Sure.
And he said my brother humbled me a little bit during that experience, and he's like, I hope Jeremy Lin is someone there for him to tell him, just to be yourself and don't let it get to your head. And I thought it was a great article. So his writing in general I really like, and I thought it was a good book. I'm not going to say it was the best book I ever saw or the best documentary, but I liked it.
Maybe I should have read the book first. I just was a little disappointed. I wanted to know more. I expected more. And again, who the fuck am I? I'm not anybody.
I'm a big fan of rock biographies, though, just in general.
So am I. I mean, I've read a lot. So far, the best one I've read is Scar Tissue by Anthony Kiedis. His life needs to be a documentary or a movie. It's incredible. But I will say Duff's documentary is so much better than another one that I saw that's up on Hulu, which is entitled Guns and Roses, which first of all pisses me off.
They probably had to, though. You think maybe for copyright issues, maybe?
You know what? I will say, because the way they filmed it, they seem to really cover their bases. But just to sidebar for a second, whenever someone says Guns and Roses or spells Axl with an E, I want to throat punch you. They've been around for a long time, know how to spell it. Anyway, I digress. So it was called Guns and Roses, Appetite for, I almost said Distortion, Destruction. And it was I guess a British English, they had this. The only people they interviewed were these stable of journalists. No one really seemed to have any real hard ties to Guns N' Roses, and all the videos that they seem to show are the ones that we watch on YouTube all the time. It shows from the Ritz early up, and they would show it like almost the full song, and they would come up with and it would show like a video where they would show produced by, name of the song, who directed it, all this stuff, and it was poor. It was very poor on Hulu. And a couple of things that really bothered me, they really painted Axl to be an asshole, which is, I understand that's the way he's always been painted, but they really seem to push it like he's a bad guy. He's a bad person.
I felt like the behind the music, they did that a little bit too.
It wasn't as far as, maybe with the behind the music, there were still some credible people in here.
Yeah.
And another one that really, which is such the antithesis of everything we've been speaking about the past few shows, with Izzy Stradlin, that they made it seem like he just wasn't important. You know how they do, I'm sorry I'm getting off track here, but you know how they do behind the music remastered? Yeah, they haven't done it in a while.
It'd be amazing if they did one with Guns N' Roses now, because Axl didn't participate. If they could get him to, I would love to see them do that.
No,
that would be great.
Of course. I mean, there are a lot of things where Guns N' Roses can go from here, whether it's a remastered, whether it's just more interviews, whether it's more books. You see people re-release their autobiographies. There's a whole timeline of this band, and I would start from maybe the breakup, post-breakup, to Chinese Democracy, to the reunion. We want to know. We want to know. This is such a fascinating story.
Yeah.
That hopefully in time that we will know. So those are I watched some Guns N' Roses documentaries.
So don't look up Guns N' Roses on Hulu.
No.
Well, you were
it's
saying...
so easy. Watch it. You can watch it. I was a little let down.
I think many of you will like it, but we'll see. I will say there's a big there's just a huge market of these documentaries that are typically narrated by a British guy about different artists, and I've seen a lot. They tend to be shit. They're bad.
Oh, this was This was like some chick hanging out on a couch, a British chick hanging out on a couch, like it was some sort of.
Was she hot at least?
She was. It was like some MTV, VH1 kind of really bad high school made documentary. It was just bad. But
Behind the Music always does it well, I feel like.
I know,
they're
but
one
it
of
was
the few.
a bad version, like a high school version. What Duff I saw was like an A+ college version of a documentary. Like he did a good job, but it wasn't whatever. Again, please come on our show if you hear us anyway, and just
defend yourself.
Yeah, he doesn't have to defend himself to me. Just call me an idiot and tell me to fuck off. But before because today we have a pretty awesome guest.
Yes, I'm psyched.
Vicky Hamilton, I guess the original manager of Guns N' Roses, or one of the original.
Yeah.
So we're going to get her on in a few moments, but I want to get into...
And shout out to Art Devana for the hookup. He was like, you got to get her on. So, yeah, it's funny, man. People seem to really like coming on the show, because after Charlie came on last week, I'm not going to give away any names, but he's like, you got to get this person on. And that really means something to me, because it's not like, they just did the interview. They must have felt like, man, this is an awesome interview. I got to get this person on. So we have like a huge bucket list of guests that we're aiming to get on. And being that we only do the show right now every other week, like it's tough to get everybody we want on, but we're going to keep coming with really big guests. And I feel like this is another, if you're a fan of Guns N' Roses, this is an A-list guest.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's cool times. We're still young in the show, and we appreciate all the feedback. I mean, it means a lot to us that I won't threaten you, unlike Ian, to review us on iTunes, but just between the iTunes, the My GNR forum stuff, the private messages that we get, I mean, nothing has really been negative, and it's just me. I know I'm full Jewish, you're only half, so I get it tenfold that I always think everything I do is garbage. It's reassuring.
I mean, I was raised Jewish, but yeah. But anyway, how does this come up every show? But anyway.
Oh, the Jew stuff?
Yeah, it's just funny.
What it is.
But moving on to something I know you wanted to mention before we get to Vicky Hamilton, Kirk Hammett calling Guns N' Roses a nostalgia act.
Yeah, that was... interesting. I should have had the entire actual quote in front of me, but
Can you look it up? It's cool.
I don't want to read it out of context, but basically, when you hear someone from Metallica send something, I'm like, okay, it's got to be Lars, because he's always saying something. But Kirk Hammett, who's the quiet guy, I find this very fascinating. And as I'm bringing up the article right now, and of course, I get a fucking pop up. The way thanks Trump. No more thanks Obama. He goes, Guns N' Roses has turned into somewhat of a nostalgia act. And he goes, unfortunately, and it's kind of sad. I don't want to think we're trying to stay young by writing new stuff, but it makes us feel relevant. It makes us feel like we're still progressing. So he's saying that Guns N' Roses isn't doing that. All right, here's my problem. Why is he picking a fight, first of all? I mean, that's what you're doing.
Was it brought up, though? I mean, we don't know the full context of the interview. It's possible they asked, what do you feel about it?
Of course, it's always possible. But that's still how he feels. For one, Guns N' Roses right now is a reunion. It's not a nostalgia act. If he wanted to say this, you say this when Bumblefoot's in the band, when DJ Ash was in the band, even with Buckethead. This is a freak show. Even though we both agree we enjoyed it, we enjoyed Chinese Democracy. But if you're going to make those points, that's the time to do it. Because otherwise, what are you doing? You're seeing Axl Rose and Friends. That's what you're doing. It's a nostalgia act. Now, it's a reunion after decades that there have been, not only have a reunion, they're playing Chinese Democracy material, which came out, I believe, the same year as Metallica's last record, which was
Death Magnetic.
Death Magnetic, which I liked. You didn't like.
No, I don't like anything after Load, and I kind of like Load.
Oh, I thought Death Magnetic was great. I mean, that's just me. We don't always have to say it.
Well, here's
but why? But they're not, because now you have Slash and Duff playing for them new material.
Yeah,
and there've been rumors of new material, but now it's just a weird time to say that because it's not nostalgia, because there are people like us seeing this band for the first time.
Yeah, you know what, I don't necessarily have a problem with what Kirk Hammett said, so we're going to disagree a little bit on this one as well. It could be taken as a shot. I'm sure the guys in the band look at it as a shot, but I kind of understand, because for the average rock and roll fan going to a Guns N' Roses show, they're going to hear those first few albums, the albums with the original or close to the original lineup. You know, Axl Slash. Very few people go to the current Guns N' Roses shows to hear songs off Chinese Democracy. I love the songs off Chinese Democracy, but I'm also a super fan.
Sure. You can argue the same for Metallica.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I would agree, because Metallica had, I know most people go to hear the stuff off Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, but they had hits after that. I mean, Memory Remains, it was a hit. People go to see Fuel. They play Fuel like almost every show. They don't seem to play anything off Saint Anger. They act like that album never happened. But those albums were relevant, and to the average rock and roll fan, unfortunately, which I'm not, I'm a super fan, Chinese Democracy was not relevant to them, and they do not know those songs. The average rock fan knows the song Fuel by Metallica, and they're going to play it.
But why is that?
And that's from the late 90s.
But why is that Guns N' Roses' fault that they were broken up at that time? They could have came out with more music. It's not they're going to throw in "Oh My God" into the set list from '93.
I'd love to see it.
So would I. I know many fans would. But they're trying to keep it different. Axl could have easily been like, now that Slash and Duff are back in the band, let's do what we did and not play any Chinese material.
Yeah, I mean, Metallica did not break up. They didn't have these issues, and they managed to stay relevant year after year after year, while Guns N' Roses went away for a while. And no, it's not their fault. It just happened the way it does. But I get Kirk's point to some extent, because Metallica has never had a time where they weren't somewhat relevant, at least for, a few years span. Every time they have a new album out, it's reinvigorated. They were constantly.
They had a movie, they had a documentary,
and they always,
even the Napster thing.
They've always played arenas. There was a time where Guns N' Roses were not playing big arenas. The last time I saw Guns N' Roses, the Rose and Roses lineup, whatever you want to call it,
and that's what doesn't count.
I saw them in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, at a much smaller arena inside a casino. And that show didn't sell out for a long time.
And
it took a while.
The time to make that comment, to call them a nostalgia act then. Why now doesn't make any sense to me, other than jealousy, that the fact that they can go away for so long and come back and just completely destroy wherever they go in the world. They get all these positive reviews. I don't see the reason behind it. There's so many other bands you could say this about. These bands that are, Rat, if you want to say that.
The current Rat. Or you could say it for Kiss. I mean, look, I like Kiss. I'm a fan.
That's probably the perfect.
Paul Stanley cannot
example.
sing anymore. He sounds awful.
That's probably the perfect example.
Yeah.
Is Kiss as a nostalgia act. because they've come out with new music in the past decade, I believe.
Oh yeah, they've had a few albums,
and nobody gives a shit.
Well, you know what's so funny too is I've mentioned them before. I'm a fan of the Three Sides of the Coin podcast, which is kind of a Kiss podcast, like what we do. But it's Kiss, and they talked about Paul Stanley making a comment that it's one of their newer songs. I think it's called Modern Day Delilah. And
I remember being on a station that played that.
And Paul Stanley called it like a classic Kiss song. And even the guys on that podcast were like, could you really call this classic Kiss? Like, aren't you stretching it a little bit?
I know, but you got to say that. I remember when Aerosmith came out with Jaded.
Yeah.
And Steven Tyler's like, this is a song we should have written years ago. And that sounds nothing like old school Aerosmith. So, I mean, you got to say that. You got to move forward. I get... what Metallica did with Saint Anger and Lulu with Lou Reed and trying to push the envelope and move forward. And you could argue Axl's been trying to do that as well since the band broke up. Trying to reinvent this entire band. Chinese Democracy is basically, the combination of the Illusions on steroids. And he tried to be different. He's not like he tried to recreate Appetite. It's just very strange why he picked it. I mean, I don't want to assume, because Kurt's always kind of the quiet guy, that he's that jealous or angry or whatever. It's good that we disagree on this. I just don't see any rhyme or reason. I guess that there goes in the reunion double bill tour of Metallica and Guns N' Roses, I guess.
I don't think it would happen, yeah. I will say, on a positive note, I have high hopes for the new Metallica album, which comes out this week for you guys listening. They've put out, I think, 2 songs. The first one, though, especially, it might be 3, actually.
I know, Hardwired and Moth in the Flame.
Then they have a third, because they have another one called Atlas Rising, I think it's called.
Not Atlas Shrugged?
No, I think it's called Atlas Rising.
What happened to that song?
Well, there's a book called Atlas Shrugged. What?
It was a Guns N' Roses leak title.
Really? I didn't even know that.
Oh, that was that. One of the many things I learned on my GNR forum.
I think I remember hearing about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And was it one they retitled, maybe? Or?
It might have been it was the time when the General was announced and all these things.
But the first song, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, the first song they put out, that song is kick-ass, and it actually does sound like old school and Justice for All Metallica. I love that song in particular. So if the rest of the album sounds anything like that song, I have really high hopes. And I have not, as I said, I have not liked anything by Metallica since Load. I mean, except for a few songs here and there. Like, I actually really like I Disappear, the song they did on the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack.
That's a good song.
That song kicked ass. No Leaf Clover that they did on S&M, that was cool.
Good song.
But overall, I mean, I have not been excited by Death Magnetic. Definitely did not like Saint Anger.
No, I didn't either. But Death Magnetic, for some reason, I did like. I liked a lot of it. I mean, it was kind of like your Illusion, because it was. There were longer songs on there, which I know they were known for back in the day, but they added certain things to it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was what it was. But I mean, this is why we're fans of it. I mean, we're hoping Guns N' Roses comes out with new material. And if they do, what is it going to sound like? Is it going to sound like where they were going, when they all broke up? Is it going to contain elements of now? I mean, it's going to be interesting, because I know you're not a fan of Miles Kennedy. But I like a lot of the tunes that he and Slash put together. So Slash is making some good new music. With Chinese Democracy, we agree Axl was making good new music.
Sure.
So it's going to be interesting. I just don't see how they're a nostalgia act when they're a living, breathing entity. And unless Kirk just completely believes that this is just a cash grab and that's it. Axl, and that he knows something that we don't know, that they actually still hate each other. This is just all for the money, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we see pictures of them smiling. And then again, we don't know.
Hey, well, Metallica, and we have Vicky Hamilton waiting, so I'll wrap it up here. But Saint Anger, you could say, bit of a cash grab at that point, because they did the documentary, and they put it out there. They were not getting along with each other. They were not liking each other.
I think it was an experiment
when they put out some kind of monster.
A regrettable cash grab.
Yeah.
Because that's just... I don't know if anyone's looked at Metallica the same way since then.
Yeah, it was very strange to see them, saying that they didn't get along and all that stuff.
Not even that. It's like you see Metallica, evil, like just bitching. It's like same thing with Dave Mustaine. The lead singer of Megadeth was crying. Megadeth!
He didn't want that in the movie. That's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, he apparently told them, I don't want this in. But actually, to wrap it all up, when you're saying maybe there's some jealousy there, I don't think so because they've had such big careers. But
right.
I saw the Big Four at Yankee Stadium a few years back, which was awesome. And it was Metallica, Anthrax, Megadeth, Slayer. That is a kick-ass lineup, which included Charlie Benanti, who we had on the last podcast. And it was not a full sellout, as opposed to Guns N' Roses, giant stadium, 2 nights in a row, sellout. That says something. But it's also a reunion. We might be singing a different tune if Metallica went away during Injustice for All and came back now. Well, I guess with that said, though, joining us on the podcast for the first time is a very important figure in Guns N' Roses history, who Art Tavanna, who you guys heard from recently, introduced us to, and we're extremely excited to have on. Vicky Hamilton, the early manager for Guns N' Roses, who has a new book out called Appetite for Dysfunction, A Cautionary Tale. First and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And if you want to just... No, absolutely. If the first thing I wanted to ask you is, I'm sure there's so much to go through and people need to pick up the book, of course. But how did it all get started? How did you meet Axl, and how did you get introduced to the guys in Guns N' Roses?
I actually met Axl and Izzy when they were in Hollywood Rose. So I was an agent at the time at a place called Silver Lining Entertainment, and Axl called me up and said, I came highly recommended, and, would I book them some gigs? And, I told him to send a tape, and he said, well, can I just bring you a tape? And I was like, well, I don't have a stereo here. And he's like, it's okay, I'll bring you a ghetto blaster. And I kind of laughed. I was like, yeah, okay. A few hours later, he and Izzy showed up and, played me this demo that was incredible, and I booked them sight unseen, and that's kind of where it started. And at the same time, I was booking Black Sheep that Slash was in for like 10 minutes. So, that's kind of where it started.
I want to take a step back, because how do you go from Charleston, West Virginia to the Sunset Strip? How did that happen? Take us through that journey.
Well, I was born in Charleston, West Virginia, but then I moved to Indiana, and I grew up mostly in Indiana.
Okay.
I went to art school there, and I had an art school teacher that I had painted sort of a life on Mars scenario for my landscape, and he gave me I think it was a C or D minus, or I don't know. Anyway, I was he's like, well, this isn't realistic. And I was like, okay, well, it might be if you lived on Mars. And that kind of made me start thinking that I probably should get out of Indiana. So,
what a specific reason. And you're still holding on to it. I like that.
Well, and I'm still out of Indiana. It's a scary place, Indiana, for some, me being one of them. So, but, Axl and Izzy were from Indiana, too. So once I arrived in L.A. and kind of got a foothold, it, was one of the bonding points for us, that we kind of escaped Indiana,
So I want you to take us, why, obviously, to leave Indiana to L.A., it seems like the ultimate movie star. Did you want to be an actress? Or how did you transition into being a manager for these, now famous bands, GNR, Poison, Faster Pussycat?
Oh, I was a manager in Indiana.
Okay.
After I dropped out of art school, I ran a record store called Apple Records and was the record buyer, and I was writing for a free press magazine and booking sort of these government things that were called Summer in the City for the parks. And, it was I just had kind of hit the glass ceiling of what you could do in Fort Wayne, Indiana, music-wise. And, I had my eye set on California because in my mind it was better to starve in the sunshine instead of the snow. So, New York was much closer, but I don't know, something about California just really had me going. And then I came out here for a month and checked it out and went back for nearly a year and saved money and moved. It was pretty much as easy as that.
So were you a fan of these early Sunset Strip bands, the bands we now refer to as hair bands and glam metal and all that? Was that just something that attracted you?
Sure. I mean, Tom Petty had told me that I look like a California girl, and at the time that was like my favorite band, so
Nice.
that's pretty much all I needed to hear. That kind of had me going. But, I worked with Mötley Crüe in the early days, Too Fast for Love, Leather Records version, and I also worked with Stryper, and I managed Poison. And, then Guns N' Roses right after Poison. It's like I not only was a fan, I kind of helped create the scene,
That's so awesome.
How does that process work? Do you, when you meet like a young Bret Michaels, you meet a young Tommy Lee, do you say, hey, I'm Vicki Hamilton, or are there rumors about you since you already were kind of seasoned back in Indiana? How does one approach these bands that were definitely a bit unhinged, I guess, at the time, very new, not knowing what they were doing? How do you go about becoming business partners?
Well, I solely rely on gut instinct on things. I hardly ever approach anyone without having seen them play first. But when I first arrived in L.A., it was pretty much punk rock. I mean, it's 1981. It's like Black Flag and Circle Jerks and those kind of bands were sort of ruling the scene. And, being from Indiana, I had never seen anything like that. And then also there was sort of the English invasion of like Duran Duran and Psychedelic Furs and those sort of bands. And then, I was a record buyer at Licorice Pizza record store, which is like catty corner from the Whiskey Go-Go, and I kept seeing, these dark-haired guys and a blonde guy walking in stiletto heels up Clark Street, and it, turned out to be Mötley Crüe. Nikki and his then girlfriend came into my record store, and, I started talking to them, and that's where it kind of started for me. It's like, since that day I met Nikki Sixx, my life has never been the same.
I'm sure you're not the first person or the last person to say that.
Right.
And I've gotten to meet the Nikki Sixx. I've told you this story before, Brando, but like super nice guy. I don't know if you had the same experience. Like he was one of the nicest people I've met, and just working in radio, I've had the chance to meet a lot of rock stars.
Right.
Is there a
Nicky
certain
is like a creative genius. I mean, he was and he still is, and I assume he always will be. He's got a little something extra that a lot of the rock stars didn't get, and so.
I mean, he's doing it now with 6 a.m., even though Mötley is no more. I mean, he's moving
Right.
forward.
Do you think he will ever quit? I doubt it.
No, never. No, I see him being a director down the road. I see him constantly doing. I mean, obviously he has his own radio show, so no, he's definitely going to be in the rock and roll news cycle for a while. Was there a certain criteria that you looked for when looking to manage these younger bands? Did you see any of them becoming what they would become, especially with Guns N' Roses?
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw it in all the bands I worked with, that they had the ability for greatness. Guns N' Roses, when they first came out, were different than all the other hair bands on the scene. It had gotten so girly by that point, it was like coming out of Poison, going into like the Guns N' Roses era.
Yeah. Oh, it's so over the top, like the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, the way that those guys looked.
Yeah, there was like, Tough, and then like, oh God, what's that one band that was just terrible? It's like, it couldn't have gotten any girlier in that moment. So when Guns N' Roses showed up on the scene, it was like, wow, what is this? You felt like you were witnessing something new and different and dangerous, I might add. It's like you knew you were watching a train wreck, but you couldn't take your eyes off of it, basically.
What were some, because you always hear that whether it's reading a book about Guns N' Roses, and I like to think, and you can tell me if one of these stories are in your book, what made them so dangerous? I mean, because everyone seemed in that era did drugs. I mean, Mötley Crüe were dangerous as well. I mean, I'm assuming, but it seemed like Guns N' Roses were particularly dangerous. Was there ever, is there a story you can tell that you were like, whoa, what is really going on here? But you stuck it out because of what they did musically. So, like, were they truly a gang as they've been painted to have been back then?
Yeah, they were. They were their own little posse. They moved into the rehearsal hall that they were rehearsing at, which was just a tiny room, and they had built this, I don't even know what to call that, basically a place where they could store their stuff, and then, they ended up sleeping up there. I mean, there's a lot of stories from that time, like it only really held about 3 people, so, there was a lot to be said about that. And then they would have these parties in the parking lot and stuff, and, they ended up moving in with me after they, Axl had a girl up there, and I don't know, he had her clothes off of her and locked her outside. And she went to the cops and said he raped her, which, he didn't, but that's how he ended up sleeping on my couch. It's like Slash called me and said, can Axl stay on your couch for a while? And I was like, yeah, sure. It was supposed to be a couple of days, ended up being 6 months. If you want to see dangerous, you move in with Guns N' Roses for 6 months.
It sounds like the best or worst sitcom ever. That just sounds like, me and Guns N' Roses going on CBS this fall.
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that because my book is getting some television looks, and
nice.
I kind of
want to take it into a place where it's fiction and just create a new band because, I don't want to insult them or whatever, but, it would be a fun show for sure.
Absolutely. What prompted you? Why now to write this book?
Well, I'd actually been writing it for 7 years. I mean, everybody wants to say, oh, you knew the reunion was coming. I had no idea the reunion was coming, and, Slash said it would never happen, and even up until last November, he was telling me it wasn't going to happen, so... I just wanted to write it because I'm 58 now, and I, started losing memories. Luckily, I had made some tapes of stories on all the different bands because I had started thinking about writing the book in 1992.
Wow.
So, luckily I'd done that, and I still had all my day runner pages and that stuff. I mean, for me, writing the book, the hardest piece of it was the timeline of what happened first, because, in the 80s and 90s, I was just as high as the band.
I love it.
I've been sober for 16 years now, though. So
Nice.
anything that happened in the last 16, I pretty much remember.
So I was going to ask you, since you worked with the band early on, and this was a time where I mentioned this on, I think, the last show, Brando, but, I got to work with Dee Snider, and he talked about the 80s hair band scene and how record labels said, if one is good, a million is better. And I think you and I saw that in our lifetime with bands like Korn. There were 10 million new metal bands signed, and now it's like a metalcore thing of all these bands being signed. So at that time...
Yeah, it's a weird thing, in the entertainment business in general. It's like, if there's one movie about bank robbing, then there's 4 at the same time. I don't know what that philosophy is.
Well, they want to profit until they absolutely kill it. So... I was just wondering if when you saw Guns N' Roses early on and they were just getting their shit together, they were, it was a little bit more punk rock and sloppy, as you kind of described. Do you think, in your mind, did you see them ever becoming the biggest band in the world?
Oh, absolutely. It's if you want to see what I saw, you can go onto Google and pull up the whole concert of the Music Machine, which I think was 1985 or 6. I mean, it was raw and dynamic, and it was great. I mean, what they're doing now is really great and polished, and they're at the top of their games as musicians, but there's something to be said for raw energy, just coming unhinged, and that's what they were all about back then.
What did you think about what happened at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? regarding Steven Adler, because I'm reading this. I mean, not like Wikipedia is always truthful, but he made a comment regarding you saying that he was really heartbroken when you left the band, and it had to do with you being a woman. Is that true?
I think it had something to do with it, yeah. I mean, Axl had taken me to the Rainbow to have dinner, and he said, I don't know if you'll always be our manager, and this is like amidst the bidding war. I mean, every night we were going out with a different record label for dinner, and he's like, I think we need a male manager, and I was like, well, what if I brought in a male partner? And he said, yeah, maybe that would work. So I set up a meeting with Doc McGee and Doug Thaler, and the band that day was like high as hell and like nodding out at the conference table. And, it's like Doug Thaler was like my mentor, and he just said to me, look, Vic, we think this band is really great, but, we already have Mötley Crüe. We don't want another band like this.
To handle both.
So that was kind of the end of that story, but
well, that's a shame.
And then even after they signed with Geffen, it was like nobody wanted to manage them. I mean, Alan Niven was the first brave soul that said he would do it, I think. But
why do you think?
No, there was a moment where there was Arnold Stiefel and Randy Phillips, and they had gotten them the house and they destroyed it and whatever, and then after that, nobody wanted to deal.
Why do you think that that Axl had said that? Do you think he was being realistic, or at least in his view, that you needed to be a man in that world, or does he look at women in a certain way that we've heard over the years?
He had a lot of record company people in his ear, and I was one of the few women in that business at that point in time. I mean, I think it's a little different now. Hopefully I've helped, bring down the glass ceiling a little bit, for girls in the business. But I still think that it is sort of that way. I mean, let's face it, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, and she still didn't win,
You read my mind. I was thinking that. I was, it's
it hasn't changed that much, and, I'm really worried about what's going on politically in our country, It's kind of sad.
Yeah, we started off our podcast because obviously we want our Guns N' Roses podcast to be a bit of escapism, but we would be remiss not to have mentioned it earlier in the show, and it is very interesting, and especially for someone like you, because we like to think we got a bit of a gut check in 2016 that the world has changed. I mean, maybe it has, maybe it hasn't, but when you were in the heart of it, when in the 80s, a decade of decadence, where every one of these bands was just about women were objects, and for you to be able to be a businesswoman at that time and to get as far as you did, that speaks a lot to your personality and your professionalism.
Thank you. I tried to keep it professional, and I didn't sleep with the band. But even today, it's like people will say, "Okay, which one did you sleep with?" I mean, it's just that world. I just don't understand. I mean, okay, clearly I lived with them, so I'm sure that brings it up for people, but if you're a woman manager, you can't sleep with your clients. It's just not going to pan out.
So I'm wondering, when they actually did switch to a male manager and the band broke out, how did it all end with you guys? Did you end on good terms? Did you still talk once they switched management?
Well, yes and no. I mean, Tom Zutaut got me an A&R job at Geffen Records. I mean, after working Mötley Crüe and Poison and Stryper and then Guns N' Roses, it was like a paycheck sounded like a good thing, because it was job security. And I really wanted to try my hand at A&R, and, I'm really glad I did. I got to work at Geffen Records under David Geffen, and, it was one of the best experiences of my lifetime, maybe second to none. Well, I don't know. It's like when I made the record with June Carter Cash and it won the Grammy, that was pretty cool, too. I got to hang out
Very cool.
With Johnny Cash and June Carter for a few months, and she became like a mom to me. I just went to John Carter Cash's wedding, and that was pretty amazing, too, but it's good that there's still those people out there as well. But Yeah, I mean, the 80s, Geffen Records, there was no record label that was better than that, so I learned from the best,
But if you don't mind me, just asking, so did it end ugly? Did you still talk with Axl, Slash, and Adler and all the guys?
Well, they were pretty much on tour, when I got the A&R job, and I also managed Faster Pussycat, and Faster Pussycat got signed a year after Guns N' Roses, and their record came out first, It was like Tom really did a great job at, making that record, and, that record will stand the test of time for all days, if you ask me. I mean, it's kind of the definitive rock record.
You're saying Appetite
it was like, and then I had to sue them because I had borrowed $25,000 from Howie Huberman, for clothes and equipment and all that stuff when they were showcasing. And I kept telling them they had to pay me back because I didn't want to pay back the $25,000 to Howie. So, they didn't pay it, so I had to, sue them. So then Geffen paid half of it and the band paid half, and they weren't very happy with me in that moment in time. Actually, I had them served at Cat House. So,
So you're saying you feel Appetite is the definitive rock record? Just to reiterate that.
Yeah.
I think we would both agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Can you name one rock record that's better? I really can't.
Nope. I don't know. Smash Mouth's debut album. No, just kidding.
So what's your status with the members of the band now? You talked about that you discussed things with Slash before you put out the book and the idea of the reunion. Do you still talk to any of the guys? I mean, Adler seems to have high praise of you for one.
Yeah, I think that I don't know this for a fact, but I think there's a gag order where they're not allowed to talk to me right now. I mean, once the tour is over, I think it will be a different thing, but, that's what I think is going on. I have not spoken to them since they started this tour, and they played the Troubadour on my birthday and didn't invite me, which hurt my feelings, but, it's like, I don't know. I don't know why Axl has it in for me because, had I let him sign the deal with Kim Fowley, he would be still paying Kim Fowley's estate for 3 of the songs on Appetite for Dysfunction, or Appetite for Destruction. So, I saved him millions of dollars. So, whatever.
That's fascinating because it's just I've never heard of a band that involved in so many different lawsuits and gag orders than Guns N' Roses. Why do you think that is? Is it Axl that's at the crux of all of this? The people in his ear?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, it's not the people in his ears. It's him.
It's him?
I think he's just paranoid.
Do you think that yeah, because I guess we spoke a lot when we spoke with John Miller. I don't know if you're familiar. He's working on a screenplay of Axl's early life, and just the way he
I met with him early on when it was just an idea.
Nice.
Yeah, no, he's still plugging away. He's a great guy.
That's good. It's like when people win their awards for their records or their screenplays, and it's like they're talking about the overnight success of things. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's like, I think that was easily 7 or 8 years ago when I met with John,
Yeah, no, he's trying. He's trying. It's definitely a tall order, and I think to do it on what we're talking about, the subject matter of Axl, we don't know if it's his childhood or just the way that he is. I mean, I'm hoping this is not just my fantasy mindset that you had positive experiences with him, that once you were all friends in addition to business partners, or no?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem with any of them. I mean, Axl became a little reclusive, and I haven't talked to him since the 80s, but all the rest of the guys I've had no problem with, then or now or whatever. It's just, I don't see them very much because they're on tour pretty much. I mean, Slash said to me that if he could be on tour 365 days a year, he would be there,
Wow.
It's like that's what he loves, so
then...
and he really loves playing with... Miles Kennedy in that band too, and they're really great. I love that band. So who knows what will happen after this tour's over? I hear it's going to go for another year, but
hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I know there'll be more dates after Dubai. Probably they'll have to go to Europe at some point. They're probably saving it for festival season, I would think.
Yeah, I've heard those rumors. So, from your perspective, obviously you haven't spoken to Axl in decades. I mean, you have some relationship with Slash, and Steven loves you. So, what do you think was the catalyst behind this reunion? Because it seemed like it would never happen. Not in this lifetime. Hence the name of the tour. Why do you think this happened? Because for me, I feel like Axl, he lost Bumblefoot, he lost DJ Ashburn. He's like, I don't have a band anymore, and something changed in him, because he seemed to be going forward with the new band, and then all of a sudden, we have a reunion. So why do you think this happened?
I think it was a combination of a few things. The money was amazing. It's big time money that they're getting, so I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. And Slash went through a divorce, and Axl never liked Slash's wife, so that's probably a key element in it too. I'm only speculating, but Duff had played with both of them, and I think he probably had something to do with it coming back together. I don't know. Those are the things that I think probably.
What's your opinion on the reunion going on now? Because it's really not a full reunion. It's not Izzy, and we see these new members like Melissa Reese that weren't even alive when you were hanging out with Guns N' Roses. So I'm just wondering what you think about it. Is it a cash grab? Is it that these guys wanted to get back together again and do this for the fans? And I don't know if you've been at the shows or if you've seen the videos online. I would love to hear your perspective on how they sound as well.
I went to the first show in Las Vegas, and it was great. And, for me, it was just awesome because, I never went to the Use Your Illusion tours. So to see them in an arena setting like that was pretty awesome, because you have to remember they were a baby band when I worked with them, so it's a, when you see all the bells and whistles and the screens and the dancing girls and everything that went along with what this show is, it's pretty amazing,
What do you think of Axl?
Do I wish that Steven and Izzy were in the band? Yeah, sure, absolutely. It's like once you take away a piece of the magic, the sound of the band changes. I mean, I even felt that way when they fired Steven. It's like Matt Sorum is a great drummer, but the sound was altered a little bit, and what it was. So, I would have liked to have seen all of the original band, and
sure.
I know Steven has played a couple of shows with them, but where's Izzy in all of this? It's like,
Well, that's what your friend Art is trying to find out.
Yeah, I know. I met with Art, and I gave him as much information as I could to help him find Izzy, but Izzy clearly doesn't want to be found, so.
What was your opinion on Axl joining AC/DC? Like, that must have been mind-blowing for you. I had to imagine, because AC/DC were one of Axl's favorite bands growing up, and all of a sudden he's fronting them and getting great reviews.
Well, that's what I was about to say. It doesn't surprise me in that he was a fan of that band, so, for him, I'm sure it was a great honor to be even asked to sing with them, and I haven't seen any of the shows, but I've watched the videos, and he did a damn good job, It's like, right on, do it,
Yeah.
It's a lot of work what he's doing, doing AC/DC and Guns N' Roses. It's, after being absent for so long, it's pretty amazing that he can keep up with that schedule,
Absolutely. I didn't get to see them. Brando did, and, I know John Miller did, and you guys have raved about the shows. He sounds on point. I mean, people were so worried about him losing his voice and all that, and it seems like it's still all there. I mean, for a few years, people got very worried. But he's been doing a killer job. Before we let you go, Vicky, what are you up to these days? I know that, as you said in the past, you've done some stuff with June Carter Cash and still, have worked with a lot of bands post Guns N' Roses and all the decades that have gone by. But what are you doing currently other than promoting this book, Appetite for Dysfunction, A Cautionary Tale?
Well, I have been out on a book tour pretty much since February. I did all of Europe, and for the last month I've been trying to catch my breath. I fell down right before I left for my Virgin Money Store tour in the UK, and it's like I broke my tailbone. So
oh, man.
Talk about you got to slow down a little bit. So that was an involuntary slowdown, but it's been going really good, and the book is getting a lot of great praise. And if you want to buy it, you can get it on Amazon.com or through my website if you want an autographed copy at VickyHamilton.com, which is Vicky with a Y. I am still managing, and I do a blog, and I have this kid named Ray Gorin who's like a 16-year-old guitar, I don't know, virtuoso, or he's just amazing, and he's like a new Slash in the making, only he's a little more pop oriented than Slash, and has a really velvety voice, and big things coming for this kid next year, and should check him out sometime.
Very cool. So are you still living on the Sunset Strip in Cali?
Hell no. I'm still in Hollywood, but
okay.
You can't really live on the Sunset Strip without having people drop in on you at random. So, no, I have moved away from the Strip, but mostly though bands want to play in Echo Park or Highland Park these days. The Strip is more of a tourist zone, I find.
Yeah, from what I hear, just as a New Yorker who doesn't live there, that the scene is dead, and it's like, it's sad to hear, because I want to go down there. I want to feel like I'm in a Guns N' Roses video if I ever get a chance to take the trip down there, which I'm sure I will.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing, It's like all the entertainment venues are closing down, and they keep building hotels on the Strip. I'm like, okay, if there's no entertainment, who's going to stay in these hotels?
Right.
It's kind of nuts to me.
Unbelievable. I guess one last question is there anything we're going to be surprised by in the book that the most hardcore Guns N' Roses fan might not know?
That they were regular people,
Fair enough.
They were not always rock stars, and they had periods of struggle too. I mean, I think every band gets turned down by things, and it's probably just good to read that your heroes have had some trials and tribulations as well.
Absolutely. That's why I always love reading rock biographies and that type of thing, because it is a reminder that your heroes are human, and they go through similar struggles that all of us do. So yeah, the book is Appetite for Dysfunction, A Cautionary Tale. Vicky's website is VickyHamilton.com, and we really appreciate you coming on. I mean, you're a very important puzzle piece in this whole world of Guns N' Roses, and the reason why we do this podcast and get to hear all these voices and get a little bit more perspective each episode on who these guys were.
Oh, thank you so much. It's very humbling.
And you definitely broke that the glass ceiling back in the 80s. So.
Oh, thank you. And I keep trying. I'm going to bring some new shit your way. Watch out.
Please do. The rock world is hurting right now. We need you. We need you, Vicky.
Yeah, I think the rock scene is kind of reinventing itself. I mean, I'm not angry like I was in the 80s, so I don't know if I'll ever have another Guns N' Roses, but, there's definitely some good rock music out there right now.
All right. Well, we look forward to what you bring to us, Vicky.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much for the time.
Bye.
Man, that was great. As I said to Vicky as we were kind of wrapping that up, I really do want to take a trip to the Sunset Strip. Like, I know that it's like a nostalgia thing now, and it's not what it used to be, but like a lot of those places still are there, and I want to see them before they get knocked down. When I watched that last Mötley Crüe concert, I kind of regretted not going. Not just for the concert itself, but like seeing the Whiskey A Go-Go and the Rainbow Room and all these places where in the Welcome to the Jungle video you see Axl getting off that bus. Like, I gotta do it, and I think I probably will. And you know me, man. If I randomly say I want to go to South Dakota, I'm doing it. So like, I think sometime 2017, I could see myself doing a long weekend on the Sunset Strip. Well, if you want to join me,
keep me in mind, because I would like to see where Lemmy hung out.
Yeah, man.
And there's a lot of stories there. Obviously, it's not the same. The same thing with, obviously, it's not there anymore. I think it's in an airport in Jersey, CBGB's.
Yeah.
It's not the same, but, you want to go to kind of just mark another, just, hey, I was here. It's the story, the music is a little bit more tangible, possibly. Here's where they were living when they were, when they wrote this music. So, I mean, and just the experience. A, and also B, rather, I've never been further west than Minnesota. So,
or I've been to Cali, but I just, I
haven't.
Like, I know there's still bands that play the Whiskey A Go-Go. And sometimes they are hair bands. Like Faster Pussycat and those bands will still play those venues. And the Troubadour is still there where Guns N' Roses played. So, like, I would love to have a weekend where, I go to a show, and it doesn't even matter if it's a hair band. Like, I want to go to a show at the Troubadour, go to a show at the Whiskey A Go-Go, have lunch at the Rainbow Room. And, a lot of these places, as she said, are going away, but they're not all away. So I feel like got to do it before these all get knocked down, because I could tell you as a New Yorker, there's a lot of great stuff that you missed out on if you were to visit now. Like, I think going to a show at Roseland is a must-do thing if you're in New York, and you can't now because it's gone.
Right.
Like a lot of these great New York landmarks. I even heard, I've never been there, and I'm not really a drinker, but that bar that's like historic is closing, and I can't think of the name.
I'm not sure.
There's a really historic bar. I'll Google it as you're responding to me, because it's one of those bars that everybody has, everybody knows of.
Well, that's what I'm doing now with just bands itself. I mean, other than Guns N' Roses, the fact that I had to see George Thorogood, I had to see ZZ Top. I mean, as we're learning, to wrap it up with this presidential election, this planet is going to end very soon. So
McSorley's, by the way.
McSorley's, okay.
Like, that's considered a legendary New York landmark. So, like, all these places closing, it's just get there before it all closes, I feel like. So I feel like now would be a good time to do it. I'm just, as I was talking to her, it reminded me that I want to go there and maybe even visit Stevie Rochelle and get to meet him, or like visit Inappropriate Earl Skakel, who does his podcast on the Sunset Strip and loves all this stuff. Like, it's just every other week that we talk about this just makes me want to go there and see it all.
We'll take the show on the road.
Yeah, I think we got to do it. 2017. Maybe there'll be a cool concert that comes up. I mean, there was that big Sirius XM Hair Nation Fest that Tuff was a part of, Stevie Rochelle, but like Faster Pussycat played. The classic LA Guns sort of lineup with Tracy Guns and Phil Lewis played. Like, there'll be something that comes up and we'll be like, we got to do this.
There's always something going on. I got family out there anyway that I should probably see at some point in my life. Nice. So that's another reason too. But yeah, no, I'm completely with you, and that's what we're here for, to kind of bring back the nostalgia for the people who've lived it, or to discuss to the people who haven't, like us, and in a world that is very much up in the air right now. We know one constant, and that is Guns N' Roses is back together. Something is right in the world.
Yeah.
Who would have thought we would live in a world where Guns N' Roses is back together, the Cubs win the World Series, and Donald Trump is president? Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria. This is a crazy planet.
2016 is an extremely memorable year, no matter how you want to, look at it, but just in the entertainment world and all this stuff.
Everyone dying.
Yeah, I just feel when you think back on 2015, there's not nearly as many events that'll stick out in my memory as this year.
This is crazy. It is slowly but surely coming to an end. Speaking of which, our episode 11 is coming to an end. Unless you had something else to mention, my dear Ian.
No, that's about it. I mean, I'll say this for the people. There's a lot of people who want to come on this show that have reached out to us, and I hope they don't think we're forgetting about them, like guys from My GNR Forum. What is it, GNR Lies?
My GNR Truth.
My GNR Truth. Wow, so the opposite of lies, the antonym, if you will.
I haven't heard that word in a long time. Good for you. SATs.
Yeah. So we haven't forgotten about all you guys, but it's just like, hey, if Vicki Hamilton wants to come on the show, kind of takes priority.
Some things are timely, because she has a book that's out. And but no, we're going to talk to a lot of people. If you want to do a quick guest spot, maybe we'll do a show that has a couple of guests. Like I think we did that the first time around.
Yeah. Or we might, I think it's always cool when we do a show of just you and I, which we haven't done in a while. That'll be cool. There's way too many people to talk to between just super fans that are in bands, guys like Charlie Benanti, and then the people who are behind the scenes. Like I was talking to James Maresco, who runs the Rock Nation Radio Twitter, and he was like, you got to talk to Mike Quink, right, who produced the first, who produced Appetite for Destruction and some of the early stuff. I'll double check that if you want. But yeah, like there are just so many behind the scenes guys that we have to talk to, guys who are part of the Juju Hounds, like that Art Tavana talked to. There's too many people involved in this world. And for us to just do this every 2 weeks, it's nuts. And it just goes back to that whole thing of people saying, are you really going to be able to do a podcast where you're just talking about Guns N' Roses? And the answer is, fuck yeah.
Yes, and we sprinkle it with some other bullshit, but I think that bullshit's still entertaining regardless. But so we really appreciate Appetite for Distortion number 11. Please subscribe to us on iTunes. Leave us a review on iTunes. We're on the iHeartRadio app. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook, both at the AFD Show. And if that is it, my dear Ian, because I like saying that, we don't know when the next one's going to come. Hopefully in a couple of weeks. We do have the Thanksgiving coming up, so we don't know. But I will say, we do know this. In the words of Axl Rose to Kurt Loder about Chinese democracy, I don't know when you'll see it. I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it.
You've been listening to the distorted minds of Brando and Scotto, dissecting all things Guns N' Roses on Appetite for Distortion. Follow the guys on Twitter at The AFD Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/The AFD Show.
Thanks to the lame-ass security, I'm going home.